Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another short episode of After the Pause. This podcast really just came from Kristy's and my book, A Place Called Bravery. Kristy, there you go. It's so good. And this book is all about how do we live courageously, dream boldly, and influence bravery in others because of who God is and because of who he says we are. And so in this podcast, we just want to talk about the things that we experience every single day and how to live courageously, dream bravely, influence that in others because of who God is. And so this morning or this evening, no matter where you're, or this afternoon, depending on when you're listening to this, the thing that we want to talk about today is how to choose courage in the midst of starting something new. I don't know about you, Kristy. I don't love change. Change is not my best friend.
No, absolutely not. And change is inevitable. And you'd think you'd get better with it over time, which maybe, I mean, we do grow in it, but gosh, it's just hard.
It's hard. Transition is really hard. Like right now, I am in the midst of another transition. And I feel like every other month since graduating from college, like 9 years ago, um, has been another season of transition. And right now I'm transitioning jobs and my husband and I are potentially moving. I don't know. There's just a lot. And like Luke might be starting a new job and there's just a lot of changes going on. And new things that are starting. And it's been interesting to be in this season and be like, I wrote a book about courage with my friend, and I have to choose courage every single day. And it's stupid hard. And I wrote a book. Like, we wrote a book on this. Shouldn't I know what I'm doing? But I think that in starting something new, in transition and in change, I think that there's so much room for fear and insecurity to just turn the dial up and to speak so loudly into our lives, and it's super unhelpful. I don't know if you've experienced that, but man, I'm in the thick of it these days.
Yeah, absolutely. It is often the loudest voice in
Yeah.
any season. Just fear is so freaking loud. Can you say
Yes.
that word on here?
Yeah.
I just
It's
did.
fine. We do. It's fine. You know what? Like there's worse things that are on YouTube. Oh my
Oh
gosh.
gosh.
It's so true though. It gets so loud. And I think that in the midst of those like new things and the changes, the things that I have to remember, and I even have like note cards on my desk. I'm pointing to my desk behind me. Um, in case you just point at random things here. Um, but on my desk, I even have reminders that just say, God has called you here. Like I need
Mhm.
those reminders when insecurity like speaks up and maybe like yells out, and when fear just shouts from its corners. Cause you know what? Like fear like shouts from like it like hides in the corner and then just shouts from there. Recently got a dog, and this puppy is just absolutely ridiculous. It will start instigating things with another dog, and then but it'll sit on my lap as if like I'm safe, like home base, and it'll try to attack this dog from the safety of my lap. I think that fear does that sometimes. It like sits somewhere kind of like away, but then yells at you from that spot because it's hard to get to it. But in those moments, like I have to remind myself that like God has called me here. He's called me to this new place. This, even though there's change and transition and it's hard, he's called me here. And I think so often, right? We've heard this from I think Jonathan, David, and Melissa Helzer. They say this all the time. That fear is loudest where God has called us the most. It's something like that.
Mhm.
I totally butchered their quote, but that idea is so solid that where God has called us, fear is going to try to hold us back from that space. And
Mhm.
that's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when you talk about like the reminders that you have around your desk. I'm sitting next to, they can't see it, but my promise wall. I have a promise wall in my room. And on that wall, like so many things that I've written down revolve around this idea of like take courage,
Yeah.
choose courage. Just because again, right? Like fear's voice is gonna be loud. Like we know of anything that we can be certain, it's that fear will always show up.
Yeah.
And so having another voice that can be louder, that can be in our face, I think is equally important, right? Like,
Yeah.
what are the things that we're fighting back at that voice of fear with?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, we have to fight back the lies, the insecurities with truth. And
Mhm.
I've had to do that. Like, I have, again, I same thing. Like, I've got note cards on my desk that just have like verses and truth that,
Mhm.
like, I work from home a lot right now. And so as I'm working, as I'm trying to do something that people are like, "Hi, Kate, can you do this for me?" And I'm like, yes, because I've done that 1,000 times before. Not like I've never done this before, but yes, I'm happy to do it. Like, and so I'm in the midst of so many new things, and I have to look
Mhm.
up and just see these verses, like,
Mhm.
and that reminder that I've been called here. And I think the other thing that you and I have talked about a lot, I forget who you said the quote is actually by. So please fill in the gaps for me in just a second. But is that idea that, like, in the midst of something new, in the change and transition that comes and the fear that's there, do it afraid. Right. Okay.
Mhm.
Kristy. Okay. Who's that by? Who said that?
Yes, I believe it was Elizabeth Elliot that coined that phrase,
Okay.
missionary, wife to missionary Jim Elliot. But
There we
yeah,
go.
do it afraid.
Yeah. 100%. And I think that that is something that we have to do. Like, if we're
Mhm.
waiting, I think one of the other like quotes that I have back there by my desk is like, if you're waiting for the perfect moment, if you're waiting for the courage to just show up,
Mhm.
you're never going to do the thing that God has called you to do, because it's just never, that's never going to happen.
Mhm.
There's always going to be fear there. There's always going to be insecurities there. Um, and God has just called us to follow him, to trust him, and to do it afraid.
Yeah, yes and amen. I keep that quote actually by Elizabeth Elliot like also here in my room and just other places. Like I'm not afraid to just write things down and put them in obnoxious places. Um, but because I need that reminder, right? It's
Mhm.
exactly what you said. Like if I'm waiting for that moment when fear isn't going to exist and like, oh, I'm finally ready to take this step, that moment is never coming.
Yeah.
And I think that's why she spoke to that in the way that she did. Like you're going to have to just do it afraid, like go afraid, take the step afraid, go into the conversation afraid, whatever it is, like
Mm.
do it afraid, because fear is always going to be there. And it's also an idea that we talk about in the book, that fear
Yeah.
will always come. And I think to add to some of what you've said already, like one of the things that I always think of when it comes to this idea of like do it afraid or finding courage in the midst of starting something new, I think courage comes from surrender. And that
Mm.
sounds so backwards, but like it's so true. And surrender to the sense of, I'm not asking people like surrender that voice of fear, because then you're never going to take a step, but surrender to the fact that like it might feel out of your control right now. Like you don't know the outcome. Maybe someone could do it better.
Mm.
XYZ, whatever those lies are, like acknowledging that the fear is real, but surrendering to the fact that, like, regardless of if I feel afraid, like, this is where the Lord has asked me to go. And what am I willing to do to go there? Am I willing to, like, lay down my insecurities and allow Him to do whatever He wants to do as I take this step?
Mhm.
I'm just thinking about all the situations, even this week, that have been so intimidating and like just moments where I've really had to pick that up, you know? And
Mhm.
I know very much in the season that you're in, like it's just one of those things. It's a daily pick it up, acknowledge fear, keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And we could go on and on and on and on and on about that. But we won't, because we said this was a shorter version. Um, yeah, but I'm excited for more conversations to come. And if you're looking for just more opportunity to dive into some of these conversations outside of tuning into this after the pause, friends, this book is jam-packed with this whole idea, like Kate said at the beginning, of learning to live with courage and dream boldly and influence courageous steps in others through the decisions that we're making because of who God is and because of who He says we are. So check out the book. The link will be below. I'm not going to say it because I'll get it wrong now, but also at the link, if you like free things, which we love free things, there is a free ebook on there. And we also still have the study guide up on the site as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yep.
Yeah, free study guide, just another thing to kind of assist. You don't need it to go through the book, But a place where we just took things and dove a little bit deeper. If you're looking for something new to kind of freshen up your walk with the Lord, it's a great resource to check out as well. So check it out at the links below. You can see any other social media stuff there. You can follow along with us on this journey. Thank you guys for tuning in with us, and we'll be back with more.